I was going to do a big intro for this video, but I don't think the MCU really needs one. So I'm just going to get right into it. I want to try and get this video under 15 minutes, so I'm going to just talk about my main points and move on. As of now, there are 26 MCU movies, and I'm not counting The Incredible Hulk. I'm aware Tony Stark shows up at the end for like 10 seconds, but I don't think that's enough to justify it. And Disney Plus doesn't have it, so I'm not going to watch it. Speaking of Disney Plus, I'm also not counting the TV series like Loki and WandaVision. I know they're in the MCU, but this is just the movies. All my rules are the same for this ranking as they were for the DCEU one I did. The only difference this time is I'm going to go in order from worst to best rather than just random. If you're curious on how my ranking system specifically works, there's a PDF in the description that explains it in more detail, but basically this list in particular is ranked on my overall enjoyment of these movies. And final reminder that this is my opinion and everyone is welcome to their own. It might almost seem like I don't like some of these movies, but I overall really enjoy the MCU, obviously enough to watch them and make this video. But there are a lot of them, so you might consider passing on some of the lower rated ones to save time, but that's for you to decide. So let's start off with what I think the worst MCU movie is. Did you like Brie Larson in Endgame? Well, if you did, here's 2 hours of her acting the same exact way she did in that movie. I did not like her, however, so I found this movie to be pretty unbearable. It feels way longer than 2 hours, which is never a good thing. That's it, really. The only other thing I have to say about Captain Marvel is that Ben Mendelsohn is in it, which I forgot about, and you probably did too. This is the only true bad movie on this list, and I would definitely avoid this one unless you're watching all of them. Then I would recommend going in chronological order just to knock this one out early, because it comes up second. 4 out of 10. There's just not a whole lot here. It's pretty boring. And for Captain Marvel, she has a special place right in the F tier. I went into Eternals expecting it to be terrible, but I'm surprised to say that it's not. It's not good either, though, and I can't recommend it since it has a runtime of 2 hours and 36 minutes. That is way too long for a superhero one-off film, and too long for most films in general. And no, just because it's longer doesn't mean you get more. It just means you have a bad writer who doesn't know how to tighten up a screenplay. There's some cool things here, but nothing worth sitting through the whole thing for. And Eternals doesn't offer anything new. For that, I give it a 5 out of 10. Only watch it if you're going through all of them just like Captain Marvel. And for Eternals, I don't think it's truly awful, but it's not that good, so I'll give it a D, a low D. Iron Man 3 is just unremarkable in every way, and that's the reason it's so far down on this list. It's an unremarkable Iron Man movie with the first two both being better in my opinion. It's an unremarkable Marvel movie with practically the entire MCU being more enjoyable than this one. It's an unremarkable superhero movie with a large amount of DC movies being better too. And finally, it's an unremarkable movie in general because it doesn't do much and makes you wonder why it was ever made after watching it. Then you remember Disney likes money. Iron Man 3 just exists, and for that it gets a 5 out of 10. And will be joining Eternals in the D tier. I'm pretty sure that's Iron Man 3. But it's better than Eternals only because it doesn't waste as much of your time as Eternals. Easily the most controversial placement on this list is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. And to be honest, I think it's probably better and I should give it a rewatch. I just found Civil War to be better than this movie in every way, so I questioned why it was relevant at all. Many people say, oh, it introduces Bucky and the Winter Soldier explains everything. And to that I say, no, Civil War explains everything just fine. I saw that before this and had no problems figuring out what was going on with Bucky and everything else. I guess my point is I would recommend watching this before Civil War if you're going to. But if you've already seen Civil War, then you could easily skip on this one. So for now, Winter Soldier is going to get a 5 out of 10, but I will revisit it soon. It's going to go, I'll give it a little bit of slack here. I'll put it in the C tier. I think this is it. Similar to Captain America: Winter Soldier, I don't really think this movie is a 5 out of 10. I do overall enjoy this one, and I would recommend it to you if you like the other Avengers movies. But I can say this is probably the worst one. That being said, it will be getting a 5 out of 10 for now, but like Winter Soldier, I need to rewatch this one. So it's going to go in the C tier with Winter Soldier, but it's going to go above Winter Soldier. Black Widow was too long, forgetful villain. I like the sister stuff though, but you know what? This movie should have come out before Endgame did. Think about it. People would care more about Black Widow when she dies, and you would go into Endgame knowing Hawkeye kills her. Thus, by the end, you're more excited to see Hawkeye Disney Plus series because it would have been a follow-up to Endgame and not this movie. Therefore, people would care more. But it's still alright in my opinion, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10, and it will be joining the other two in the C tier. I've recently been told that I'm too harsh on this movie, but I've seen it a couple times now, and I just don't think it's that good of a Spider-Man movie. Far From Home is entertaining, so I overall like it. It's just the least fun Spider-Man movie in my opinion, except for maybe The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And especially compared to how No Way Home turned out, this one could have been and should have been a lot better. Spider-Man Far From Home gets a 6 out of 10 and will be going into the C tier. It seems whenever Marvel comes up with a villain, most of the time they just take the hero and color swap them, but this time they're evil. That's what they did in Ant-Man. This is why people were sick of seeing the Flash fight evil speedsters every season in the show, and yeah, I'm aware that's how it usually goes in the comics. Anyway, Ant-Man's villain is less forgettable, but still not very exciting. This gets a 6 out of 10. This to me is an origin movie that is entertaining with likable heroes, and that's really it. The plot's fun, but nothing too special. So I'm going to give it a high C tier. Although not the best Spider-Man movie, I do think Spider-Man Homecoming is a good one. Tom Holland is a good Peter Parker, and it is always fun seeing him be Spider-Man in high school. Vulture stands out in the MCU as one of the standalone villains that is actually remembered, but I think that's more for that one car scene and his costume rather than his motivation as a villain. But either way, Spider-Man Homecoming gets a 6 out of 10, and Homecoming's going to go in the C tier right above Ant-Man. Another controversial spot, I'm sure, but Guardians of the Galaxy is number 17. But this movie was pretty generic for me and not really that funny, especially compared to the second one. I know a lot of people probably have this in their top 5, but it's just an entertaining movie for me, and that's it. I'll give it a 6 out of 10, and I don't really have that much more to say on it. Also going into the C tier. Okay, I swear this is the last time I say this, but this is by far the most controversial placement on this list, just based on what it is above, and that's Thor: The Dark World. But I honestly think this movie gets too much hate. I think this movie is the perfect example of how the average Marvel fan looks at movies and how they are all just so happen to be on the same page. It's almost to the point where you can watch the newest Marvel movie and just see what everyone else is saying about it and write your review based on what other people say rather than seeing it for yourself. It's okay to like unpopular movies, and it's okay to dislike other people's favorites. I like this one, therefore I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. But I think it's still going to go in the C tier. This one, right? I still agree that it is the worst Thor movie. Iron Man 2 is not nearly as good as the first, but still far better and more enjoyable than the third. This is about as average as the MCU movies get, but that's not a bad thing. I just think there are plenty of other better movies here. So Iron Man 2 is going to get a 6 out of 10. I especially like the War Machine scenes, and the villain is a little bit more memorable than the third, but again, not as good as the first. So I'm going to put it, this one, right? Low B tier. I like Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, but not as much as most people. It doesn't help that the bad guys are basically a ripoff of the League of Assassins from DC. I know that DC and Marvel copy from each other all the time, but this one's like really similar. An immortal leader who created an army of ninja assassins to meddle with world-changing affairs, and their base is a monastery built in the mountains. Kinda suspect if you ask me. I think this movie's biggest strength is the martial arts, which are really cool to watch. So I will give a 6 out of 10 to Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and we'll put it in the B tier. This is definitely going to be the shortest one, but I've only seen the first Thor once, but all I can really remember from it is that I liked it and that I would recommend it. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, and that is going to be it. It's going to go in the B tier. I guess one thing I can add is that I had no idea Hawkeye was actually introduced in this one versus the Avengers movie. I always just assumed that was his introduction. So I guess that was cool. Much better than the original in my opinion. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is funnier, the characters are more enjoyable, and it's just more fun. The villain is more memorable this time around as well. Overall, this movie is an improvement in just about every single way from the first one. So Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 gets a 7 out of 10 from me, and also goes into the B tier. Just like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Ant-Man and the Wasp is much better than the original. I especially enjoy all the characters more this time around, and everyone seems to be a step up from before. I like the villain more this time too, but still pretty average. I would recommend this one at a 7 out of 10, and also goes into the B tier. Starting off the top 10, the first Captain America stands out to me more than other origin movies on this list, mostly because of when it takes place. It's a World War II movie, and I think that helps it out a lot. Everything is solid here and sets up the Captain America character for not only the sequels, but the rest of the MCU. Captain America The First Avenger is a 7 out of 10, and I would recommend that you start with this one if you're watching all these movies because it comes first chronologically. This one's going to be at the top end of the B tier. I was surprised that I really enjoyed Doctor Strange when I saw it. I had seen him in Endgame and Infinity War before his own movie, and thought he was a bit of a stuck-up character in those, so I wasn't sure if I would like his own movie. But I actually think his character is the best part about the movie. He just comes off as a real person who isn't perfect, and it really grounds the movie in reality, regardless of all the magic going on. Doctor Strange is a 7 out of 10 and deserves its spot in the top 10, and will be the first A tier movie. Another good origin story, Black Panther not only establishes the character, but the location and culture of Wakanda. Although Civil War was technically T'Challa's debut, his own movie gives him a personality and an explanation that makes you care for him and his mission. And we finally get a good villain. Warmonger has it all. Personal involvement in the conflict, he looks cool, comes off as serious and threatening, and challenges the hero on every level. Although not perfect, Black Panther is a shining example of when the MCU doesn't get lazy and aims for above average. It gets a 7 out of 10 and goes into the A tier. Thor Ragnarok really turned the character of Thor around from a serious, almost bland character to someone who comes off as alive and funny. Maybe not accurate to how the character is supposed to be, but I do like this version better. He's more enjoyable to watch and has a lot better interactions with the other characters. Easily the best Thor movie and one of the best standalone movies in general. Thor Ragnarok is easily a 7 out of 10 and goes into the A tier. I've seen this movie more than anything else on this list. One time in 7th grade we went on a field trip and I had this movie downloaded on my iPod Touch. I watched it probably 3 times that day and I still really enjoy this movie. However, I think this one doesn't hold up as well, especially compared to the other Avengers movies. Every conflict in this movie comes back later in a better way, and this is just a good, fun superhero team-up movie that was really the first of its kind, and it deserves credit for that. The first Avengers is a high 7 out of 10, and I definitely recommend watching this as the first Avengers movie, because otherwise it'll be overshadowed by the other one. So this is going to go into the A tier. And making it into the top 5 is Avengers Endgame. I got a lot to say here, so let's start off with what I didn't like. First, as soon as I saw Infinity War, I said, they better not fix everything with time travel, and they ended up doing that. I guess I was just hoping for a more clever solution, since time travel was the obvious answer. Second, I disliked that they killed Thanos in the first 10 minutes, because it took away from the stakes at the end of the battle for me. In the end, the Thanos they were fighting wasn't the Thanos that ruined everyone's lives in the first place, so it's almost like they were taking out their anger on a clone or something. I guess I just would have felt more satisfaction if they had an epic final battle against the real Thanos. And a final couple things, making Thor fat and all comic relief until the end was an odd choice. Captain Marvel was annoying in every scene she was in, and I don't know why the writer chose to skip 5 years It just seems like an unnecessarily long period of time, and the time travel second act was a little long. Now, all that being said, this is a great movie. There was so much hype around this movie, especially in my friend group, that this was the first movie I ever bought opening night tickets for. It was the very first showing, although I ended up buying tickets for the wrong seats. It was totally worth it, and to this day was the single greatest theater experience I can recall.
See, we're cool. See, we're cool because we sit in the lounge and then there's stage. Being a shitwad.
The last 40 or so minutes, you know the part I'm talking about, made sitting through the rest of it completely worth it. This is how you justify a 3-hour runtime, even though it probably could have been around 20 minutes shorter. Just about everything in this movie has an Easter egg or reference behind it, even the songs chosen for the soundtrack. And that level of detail has to be commended. Okay, I think that's enough on Endgame, but I could go on for a bit longer. Endgame is an easy 8 out of 10 and was a great finale to the main part of the MCU. Endgame is easily an S-tier MCU movie. Iron Man is the gold standard for not only standalone MCU films, but superhero movies in general. Iron Man is how it's done. What a great foot to start on for your cinematic universe. This is how you show that you mean business and should be taken seriously. The villain is good and memorable. Tony Stark has a great character arc and believable rise to becoming Iron Man. Not much else to say, other than absolutely go watch this if you've never seen it. Iron Man the First gets an 8 out of 10 and is a must watch for everyone. Iron Man goes easily into the S tier, right above Endgame. These next 3 movies I consider amazing and are some of my favorite movies ever. Spider-Man No Way Home is the most recent MCU movie. That's right, I made this video before the new Doctor Strange on purpose. Just so happens to be one of the best, and I'm very happy to say that. Before this came out, I was a little worried based on the MCU being on the decline and how the previous 2 Spider-Man movies were pretty average, but I was very glad to be proven wrong. If Endgame was the best theater experience I ever had, this was second, no contest. Every surprise in this movie worked and was earned, not just shoved in for fan service. Major spoilers, welcome to the video. My friend Richard and I almost lost it when Andrew Garfield showed up. After Toby showed up, Richard turned to me and said, "I'll give you $1,000 if James Franco shows up." I was also shocked to see really good acting in this movie too, like standout performances from Tom Holland of all people, Willem Dafoe, and Andrew Garfield. So I have to give Spider-Man No Way Home a 9 out of 10. Bravo. And goes into the S tier as a top 3 movie. Coming in second place, give it up for Avengers Infinity War. It was close, but nonetheless, Infinity War is almost perfect, and I think the choice to focus on Thanos as an almost sympathetic but at least understood character was a bold choice but the right one. Gamora's death scene was beautiful, and just every scene was beautiful. The fight scenes here are the best in all the MCU and on a level of their own. That's it really. This film's majestic, as I would describe it. Infinity War is a 9 out of 10. And fun fact, this movie has 2 of my top 10 hero entrances of all time. That being Captain America to save Vision and Thor showing up to Wakanda. And of course, makes it into the S tier. Which means my number 1 pick for the best MCU movie is Captain America Civil War. The unofficial 5th, technically 3rd Avengers movie, Civil War has my favorite standalone villain and an absolute genius plot. The final fight between Iron Man and Cap is my favorite fight Marvel ever did, and the villain voiceover is masterful. Like I said in the Winter Soldier segment, this movie is just that movie, but better, and Bucky is more interesting here in my opinion. It's really cool seeing this movie set up the MCU to the state it's at when Infinity War starts, and the fallout between Iron Man and Cap is well done. Finally, the fight between Team Cap and Iron Man was amazing and revolutionary for superhero cinema, and might be my favorite part of the movie. It's so cool seeing almost all the heroes all at once, and was the endgame before the endgame. At last, Captain America Civil War gets a 9 out of 10 and makes my top 5 superhero movies of all time, and is at number 1 on the S tier. Absolutely deserving. Congratulations, you made it till the end. As a non-Marvel fan but fellow superhero fan, I hope you MCU enthusiasts take it easy on me. I know I placed some fan favorites pretty low, but something had to be last, and they're all fan favorites to someone, except for Captain Marvel and Eternals. Everyone agrees those are the weak ones. Anyway, I've taken enough of your time and want to respect your time, unlike Eternals, so I'll end it here. If you disagree with my list, want to make your own, or have something to add to one of my points, please leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time when I rank all the DC AMU movies, which you probably don't even know what those are.